Did you know that some of the richest and most powerful kings and queens in history smelled absolutely horrible? We imagine medieval castles filled with perfume, clean silks, and golden baths. But the truth. Royalty often had hygiene habits that would shock you today. Stay with me, because in the next few minutes we're peeling back the velvet curtains of medieval courts to reveal the disgusting, bizarre, and downright horrific hygiene routines of kings and queens. Quick question for you before we dive in. If you were a servant back then, what's the one chore you'd never want to do for a king or queen? Let me know in the comments. And trust me, after you hear this, you'll have plenty of choices. What if I told you that some royals believed bathing could actually kill them? Stick around, because that's just the start of how bizarre things get. Picture this. A king, sitting on a golden throne, draped in silk, but he hasn't bathed in months. Why? Because in medieval Europe, many royals believed water could carry deadly diseases. For example, King Louis XIV of France, the so-called Sun King, was said to have bathed only 3 times in his entire life. He actually bragged about hating baths. Instead, he covered his body in perfumes and powders to mask the smell. Imagine being close to him at a royal banquet. And he wasn't the only one. In England, Queen Elizabeth I famously claimed she bathed once a month, whether she needed it or not. By modern standards, that's well horrifying. But wait, if they avoided baths, how did they actually clean themselves? The answer is worse than you think. Instead of bathing, medieval royals turned to clothes and perfumes as their defense against dirt. Wealthy monarchs often owned dozens of sets of fine linen, and changing into fresh clothes was thought to cleanse the body. Perfume was another weapon, but it wasn't the sweet, delicate kind you'd find today. Medieval perfumes were heavy, musky, and overwhelming, designed to drown out body odor, not enhance it. Some queens even rubbed scented oils directly into their wigs and gowns instead of washing their hair. The problem? Without real washing, these wigs and fabrics became breeding grounds for lice and fleas. Here's where it gets even grosser. Nobles often wore layers of makeup made from toxic lead and mercury to cover blemishes. They thought they looked glamorous, but in reality, they were slowly poisoning themselves, and the heavy makeup trapped even more dirt and sweat underneath. Would you rather bathe once a month like Queen Elizabeth I, or never bathe at all like Louis XIV? Drop your answer below. I'm curious who you'd pick. But even worse than dirty clothes and perfumes is what happened inside royal castles. No, it's not about rats. It's about their toilets. You'd expect royal palaces to have luxurious bathrooms, right? Wrong. Most castles had garter-robes, basically stone seats built into the castle walls, where waste dropped straight into a moat or pit below. It sounds bad, it gets worse. Servants had to clean these pits, and the stench often drifted into the living quarters. In summer, the smell could be unbearable. And the royals themselves? They didn't use toilet paper. Instead, they relied on scraps of linen, moss, or in some cases, even their hands, rinsed quickly in water. The King of France reportedly had a special servant, called the Groom of the Stool, whose entire job was to assist him during his bathroom time. Yes, you heard that right. Now imagine being that guy. It was considered an honor. But I'm not sure anyone today would agree. If you had to work in a medieval castle, would you choose to be a cook, a servant, or the Groom of the Stool? Comment below. I bet I know which one most of you will avoid. But here's the real kicker. What happened when royalty did finally decide to bathe? Because when they stepped into a tub, it wasn't the luxurious experience you're picturing. Bathing, when it did happen, was a huge ordeal. A giant wooden tub would be brought into the royal chambers, lined with cloth and filled with water carried by buckets. But here's the thing. The water wasn't always clean. In fact, it was often reused between family members. To make it fancier, herbs, flowers, or even milk were poured into mask odors. But that didn't fix the problem. Imagine soaking in lukewarm, dirty water after your brother, your sister, and maybe even half the court had already bathed in it. Sometimes baths weren't even about hygiene. They were considered medicinal rituals. Kings would sit in herb-filled tubs for hours, believing it cured everything from headaches to plague. And speaking of plague, during outbreaks, some royals refused to wash entirely, thinking open pores from bathing made them more vulnerable to disease. So instead of getting cleaner, they got dirtier and sicker. So the next time you watch a medieval movie and see a glamorous king or queen, remember, Behind the silks and crowns, they probably smelled worse than a barnyard. From rare baths and toxic makeup to toilet horrors and perfume clouds, the hygiene of medieval royalty was anything but royal. But here's the real question. If the kings and queens were living like this, what about the peasants? Were they even dirtier or surprisingly cleaner than the royals themselves? That's a story for another video, and trust me, the answer will shock you. Before you go, tell me in the comments, which medieval hygiene habit disgusted you the most? And don't forget to subscribe, because next time, we'll uncover the dark and dirty secrets of medieval peasants. Until then, stay clean.